The TLDR of this review is simple. If for some reason you were only interested in a campaign, then you can pass. I would recommend going to play literally any other Battlefield campaign. But if you're craving a modern, weighty military multiplayer shooter with that iconic Battlefield chaos, free from the silly cosmetics and metaverses of the competition, Battlefield 6 delivers. I guess a headline is that there is a campaign at all after 2042 omitted it completely. So I give it credit for at least having a campaign, something I do think makes the overall package of any shooter feel much more robust and enticing. But if you imagine the most generic modern military shooter campaign you can, then you've got a pretty good idea of what to expect. It's by no means awful or unplayable, it's just one of the most bland, predictable campaigns I've ever played. I will also give it credit though for being mostly bug-free, beyond the occasional janky animation, but it all works and it serves its purpose of giving you things to shoot at, but beyond that there's not much praise I can really give it. The story sees us in a world where NATO is collapsing and a private military force known as Pax Armada is filling the various voids. And yada yada yada, people called things like Murphy and Gecko and Hemlock have to foil some big baddie.
Gecko, I didn't put you on this team because you're a thinker.
No. You put me on the team because I'm a hunter.
I mean, you know the drill, right? You play through a series of flashbacks that slowly fill in the gap of trying to piece together why you and your squad are now harassing this woman. The story does attempt to be interesting towards the end, but just as it has a glimpse of intrigue, the credits roll. The story just never takes the time to stop and make you care about who any of these people are to begin with, so the whole affair just rings hollow. There is also some truly cringe dialogue that is at least almost so bad it's funny.
We're out of time. So were they. Yeah. Got him.
The missions themselves are mostly also extremely linear and predictable. It's very paint by numbers. There's your obligatory stealth sections, sniping missions, tanks, door breaches, etc. I don't mind them sticking to the basic building blocks of a traditional campaign, it's just that other Battlefield games have done all of those kinds of missions so much better, and this one here offers the dullest version of each of them. Also, I will ding it for lacking any kind of aerial combat mission, which is often one of my favourite kind of Battlefield campaign staples. I will say it was nice to see a beach landing mission though. I can't remember the last time a shooter had one of those. Even sometimes where missions may give the illusion of being slightly open, you'll often get hit with out-of-bound warnings for deviating even slightly from the path. There is one mission towards the end where it does briefly remember it's a Battlefield game and gives you an actual battlefield to engage with, which to me is the kind of gameplay I think the series should be doubling down on and leaning into. Why they continue to chase after Call of Duty's tail, I'll never know. The series' signature destruction does occasionally rear its head for a moment of spectacle, or to provide a satisfying option to take down a whole building facade in order to take down just one guy. But if you try to make anything off the beaten path explode, you're met with stiff resistance. Meanwhile, destroyed vehicles and debris all vanish quickly too, making the world often feel like hollow set dressing rather than a visceral, battle-worn landscape.
That makes two.
There's little in the way of enemy variation beyond some soldiers having armor, being snipers, or carrying a rocket launcher. While enemy AI is pretty laughable and often just runs out into the open to stand there and get shot. Most egregious though is how they will barely react to being set on fire, which makes the selection of incendiary weapons feel ridiculous. You'll also run with a squad of friendly AI which play their support roles like medic, providing a revive should you go down, or throwing you some ammo should you run low.
Drop some rounds for you.
Visually, it also all felt quite dated and a step down from the last few campaigns. It's by no means ugly, but for a series that has been known to push visuals, I was pretty underwhelmed. Character models and faces in particular left me cocking my eyebrow. I sense checked myself and went back to play 2013's Battlefield 4, which is the last modern Battlefield campaign I can compare this with, thinking that I must be remembering how that looked with rose-colored glasses. But I don't know, I actually think Battlefield 4 looks better than this to me. What do you think? I think the fact that I'm even slightly unsure of which looks better when comparing this to a 12-year-old game says a lot. Many probably won't care that much about any of that though, because after all, Battlefield has been a shooter all about the multiplayer. And most importantly, of course, Battlefield 6 multiplayer just slaps pretty hard. The simple choice to return to a more grounded military setting is just a smart salve to the hyper metaverse filled sweatfests on offer elsewhere. And where those visuals perhaps left me underwhelming campaign, it's a different story in multiplayer. With all the chaos of the big battles, that silky performance shines, and suddenly it all just looks like a much more impressive game. Most importantly though, it all feels good to play and actually works. Battlefield 2042 launched in a notoriously awful state that made it borderline dead on arrival. Not the case here. The netcode seems stable, hit registration is solid, and game-breaking glitches and bugs are yet to rear their heads in my experience. Mechanically, it's just a weighty, satisfying team shooter. It's got a quick but not too quick time to kill, where team play, positioning, and map awareness will get you further than a lot of jumping, sliding, and diving antics will. Plus, that iconic mix of vehicles and class-based infantry action still creates so many of those fantastic Battlefield moments. Helicopters rain from the sky, tanks roar through the streets, while soldiers scream out and frantically push for the objective. There's also quite loose skill-based matchmaking in effect here, which means matches don't devolve into complete sweatfests the more you play and the better you are. It's the kind of game you can just jump into and run around, experiment with classes and loadouts, and just have some fun without having to be playing at 100% all the time. It'll feel very familiar for fans of Battlefield 3 and 4. I'm sure there's been plenty of little tweaks to movement and gunplay, but for the most part, it just feels like classic Battlefield. There are a couple of nice little additions though, one letting you grab onto the back of vehicles for a quick ride, and another letting you grab and pull down teammates while reviving them. There's something about being pulled out of the line of fire for a second chance that creates these great little moments of camaraderie and teamwork. Of course, one of the biggest debates in the Battlefield community is whether classes should be locked down to specific weapon types, creating more of a clear scissor paper rock consequence to class choices, compared to those who prefer to just be able to choose whatever weapon they want. While the open weapons approach is now the default, at least this time there are specific playlists that cater to closed weapon variants. Personally, I think options are always a good thing, so it's good to see players get the choice. And classes having proficiencies for their designated weapon types does at least encourage you to lean into their intended playstyle. But personally, I do like not being stuck with a submachine gun when I want to play as an engineer on one of the bigger maps. Each class now has several special training paths that provide various different passive perks and a special ability that you can activate after getting enough XP in a round, like a recon UAV for example. They're pretty minor abilities, especially for the amount of XP needed to activate them, so they didn't really come into play much in my experience. There's of course plenty of weapon and character customization options, which gives you lots to keep playing and grinding for. While a lot of it is stuff you'll unlock naturally by playing, it can feel a little confusing to take in everything from the menus. There's just all these different missions and quests tucked away that you need to complete in order to unlock specific things. And speaking of customization, one of the downsides I think of keeping a realistic military aesthetic is that character customization can feel a bit samey. I mean, there's only so many ways to spice up military camo. Still, I do prefer that aesthetic to having a bunch of Nicki Minaj's or American Dad characters running around.
Playtime is over when Nicki drops in.
No hate to Nicki Minaj. Map design is overall pretty solid. None of them really stood out as being iconic or super memorable, and the lack of any big levolution moments does take a little personality out from them. But I do also feel that helps make matches and combat feel a bit less over the top. Maps just feel like places that are believable parts of the world, rather than a video game map. There's also a good variety of settings, from close-quarter European city alleyways, perfect for smaller modes, to wider urban street warfare, and more sprawling outdoor settings for larger 64-player chaos. When it comes to the actual modes you'll be playing, it's mostly the classic point-taking and holding modes like Conquest and Breakthrough,
Taking the sector. Hostiles are retreating.
or just straight-up deathmatches. One new mode is Escalation, where teams fight to control points over several rounds, with each round causing the winning team to gain a point, while also making the control point closest to their spawn disappear. It is a fun mode and does help naturally balance things out a little, while pushing everyone together towards the end for some hectic final stands. There's also the creation tools on offer through the game's Portal mode, which allows players to create their own game types and variants. I had a quick look at the tool, which you can use either in a browser or download an SDK. In browser, you have some more simplified options for tweaking basic match variables that lets you create custom modes quite easily, while the SDK lets you go deeper with custom map designs and the like. I took one look at the SDK, realized it was out of my depth, and was happy to leave it for others. It's definitely not quite as user-friendly as something compared to like Halo's Forge mode, for example. It is however nice and easy to access people's creations in-game with the Experience browser. So far, looking at what people have created, it largely seems to be helicopter and jet practice modes, which I certainly appreciate. But there's other things I saw like a jet racing mode that do hint at some of the more exotic creations people can come up with. Giving the community creation tools is always a great move, and pretty much never fails to lead to some pure gold. Of course, post-launch support is going to be a big factor in how successful Battlefield 6 is in the long run. I was invited to a hands-on preview of the first season's content, and I think things are looking pretty solid on that front. Coming in Season 1, there's 2 brand new maps, Blackwell Fields, a large, fairly open oil drilling site with lots of flat land on one side and rolling hills on the other, providing a great but fairly traditional Battlefield-style playground for vehicles, snipers, and aircraft especially. Then there was Eastwood, which I think may be my favourite map yet, offering a large slice of an idyllic SoCal suburb, complete with country club and golf course. This offers a great mix of house-to-house and medium-range outdoor encounters. And the setting just really highlights the destruction of a match too, as everything goes from pristine suburbia to war-torn rubble. There's also something just very satisfying about rolling a tank over golf buggies, or blasting someone off the green, or driving a tank into the country club. I should note there is also a third map coming which we didn't get to play, although that looks like it's just going to be a snowy reskin of Empire State. There's also 2 new modes that we got to play. Strike Point, a fast multi-round 4v4 mode with no respawns, where each team tries to either capture a point or wipe the other team out. And Sabotage, an 8v8 mode that'll only be available for a limited time, where teams take turns attacking and defending several stockpiles. The team that does the most damage to them wins. They're both fine, but I don't see them becoming fan favourites, and they felt like an attempt to offer something more geared towards the Call of Duty crowd. At the very least, they're not the kind of modes that I come to Battlefield for. I'm here for those big maps, vehicles, and chaos. But more options and ways to play never hurt anyone, so at least there's something for those that like faster, more intimate modes. The season will of course come with some new cosmetics, weapons and vehicles, and a battle pass with free and premium tiers. The premium tier does appear to be the one and only purchase available in the game, so it does seem to be avoiding becoming filled with lots of microtransactions, which is a great thing to see. So overall, it seems like a pretty solid offering for a season's worth of content, especially with most of it landing for free. I also like that it's being rolled out monthly, with each month seeing one of the new maps and modes dropping, which gives a steady stream of new things for players to check out. So post-launch support is looking good, and the developers do seem to be responding well and quickly to any issues and complaints within the community, so things are looking promising for the long term. So far so good then. The foundations are here for a fantastic multiplayer game. It was hard not to jump into a chopper, remember how awful I am at piloting, and crash it immediately, and just think, Battlefield's back baby. Play.